Welcome to MyLife, Chassidus Applied, episode 189. A good Yontif and a good Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh Kislev is always a type of Yontif. Rosh Chodesh, the new moon. As a matter of fact, in places in Halacha and Svarim talk about women who avoid doing any work on Rosh Chodesh because they took upon themselves Rosh Chodesh connected to the moon and Levana. But especially Rosh Chodesh Kislev for Chassidic Chabad, and by extension to the people, the Jews and people of all over the world, it is a yontif, special yontif, because 40 years ago on this day, the Rebbe, after suffering a severe heart attack, Ashmini Atzeres night, the Rebbe went home. It was like the first day that he could actually go home. He stayed in his room, which essentially became like his hospital, if you can call it that, for those few months. And Chodesh Kislev was when he went home. And since then it became a Yom Tov, because the day when a person comes out of a crisis, a health crisis, when you avenge Gamel, and they can go home, is considered a holiday. Especially you have a Rebbe who represents and encompasses so many people and carries the responsibility for so many. So Chodesh Kislev marked the day that after this concealment, after this challenge, after this setback, so to speak, the Rebbe came back not only to the Briusei, to his health, but as I discussed last week and a number of times, it actually the Rebbe's efforts and work doubled and tripled even more than ever before. Which right there gives us a lesson in life, that here we'll talk in even a grubber language. A Rebbe, 76 years old, suffers a heart attack. It's not a simple matter. And with all the challenges involved, not only did it come back to the same strength, as I said, the Buriyov, as the expression is, but much stronger than ever, lesson to each of us. No matter what setback we experience, no matter what challenge, when you forge ahead and when you have the betochen, the faith and the trust, you're able to overcome any difficulty. And the contrary, as Chassidus says, Yisur ne'er min ha'cheshech, that out of the darkness comes even a stronger and more powerful light than ever before. As the Rebbe told the doctors at the time, when he asked the question, what draws the blood? Is it the needle or the vacuum? It was obvious the vacuum, the empty part, has a power. When something so-called is missing, it creates a void and a vacuum, and that's like an energy that's even more powerful. Today in physics, we have the example of a black hole. A black hole is something no one can see. It's a star whose gravitational pull is so intense, it doesn't even allow light to escape. So what is greater, a star, a bright star that you can see? The sun is a star like that, or other stars, or a star you can't see. So initially, ostensibly, it seemed that a star that you could see is brighter. But the more energy is in a star that you can't see. Like it says in Chassidus, that the koyach hatzimtzum, the power to conceal, requires a deeper strength than the power to reveal. When a chacham, a wise person, speaks, it requires a certain amount of energy, a certain amount of investment. But for a wise person to have something to say and they withhold saying it, repress themselves, suppress themselves from saying it, that requires even a greater strength for a wise person. And as such, there's sometimes the koyach to conceal comes from a deeper place than the koyach to reveal. And obviously we want it to be in a revealed way. So when you see how a negative situation can turn and be a catalyst, a springboard for unbelievable growth, then you reveal that inner strength that Chassidus talks about in Gevura sometimes has deeper strength than Chesed itself does. Even though Chesed is the flow of love, Gevura is withholding. Gevura is like the brakes, a type of suppression, and yet in that lies even a greater strength, and that is a lesson in our lives, that no matter what we go through in life, when things are going well, obviously we should take full advantage of that. But even when things seem to be on the surface level not so easy or even difficult, is kashayana isam, as they were oppressed, as the Torah tells us the Jewish people were. In direct proportion to that, they multiplied, thrived, and blossomed. So not always is something that looks negative is actually negative. It can be a stepping stone to something deeper. So that's a lesson in life in general, because so many of us sometimes deal with situations where we have a setback, where we have a fear, where we have resistance, and it paralyzes us. The key thing to remember is never allow yourself to be paralyzed, and realize that in that paralysis may lie great strength, a resistance that if you harness it and channel it properly, you can bring to far greater strengths and far greater power. So that's a very obvious lesson. And 40 years later, when we arrive, the full appreciation, understanding what our teacher taught us 40 years ago, it has a certain dimension, a qualitative shift, where we can appreciate that even more now. And of course, Gimel Tammuz was even a more severe concealment than Shmini Atzeres Tov Shalamet Ches 40 years ago. So clearly the lesson applies today as well, that though we may not have seen yet the Rosh Chodesh Kislev of our time, but as we enter Rosh Chodesh Kislev, as we conclude this special day, it gives us the power, the hope, the belief that this too, the story is not over, and we will be zeicher to the Gula Amitis Vashlema in the fullest possible way, and even more intense due to the fact that it comes sometimes from the concealment or through the concealment. So that's a very basic lesson for each one of us. Today is also coming to the conclusion of the weekend of the Kinnus HaShluchim, the Shluchim of the Rebbe, which every year takes place around Rosh Chodesh Kislev. The Rebbe himself would address these kinnusim from when its inception. First, it was the Rebbe suggested it in Eretz Yisrael for the Shluchim. Then it came in the United States, Tav Shemem Daled, 1983, and then it only grew every year. First was only a smaller group of Shluchim. Then it expanded to more Shluchim. Then the Rebbe said, Kinnus HaShluchim Eilami. It should be global Shluchim from all over the world. So you can have 3,000, 4,000, whatever the exact number is of Shluchim coming during this weekend. And of course, coinciding with Rosh Chodesh Kislev. In a few months, in the Chav Beishvat, they coincide the Kinnus HaShluchim of the women. So the Kinnus HaShluchim, the Rebbe addressed it, as I said, every year. I was zeicher to write many of those sichos that the Rebbe edited, all speaking about the role of Shluchim and what a shliach is, and also connecting it to all of us, in the sense that every human being is sent by God as a shliach to this earth to do what? To make a dira b'tachtenim. Then there are those that their entire lives they dedicate it. They don't just do it part-time or in certain hours, but their whole 24/7 being is they exist in a certain place, simply totally due to being an ambassador of the Rebbe is there to represent Shluch Shalom Kamesi. And the Rebbe always speaks about the two sides of it. That on one hand, a shliach has to be not a child and not a servant. It has to be someone that is a bardas, an intelligent person who has an independent opinion. Bardas b'finyasmi, yes, independent human being. And yet, he chooses by his own volition to become a shliach of a mishaleach, of the sender, of the emissary of the one who sends him. And as such, the halacha says, shluch shalodam kamesei. He becomes like this mishaleach. And the Rebbe speaks about the different levels that we find in halacha and nigla. The Rabbi in different svarim that talk about this, Rabbi Kiva Eger, I was going to say, but I don't mean Rabbi Kiva Eger. I'm slipping my mind the sefer that the Rebbe brings about it, but brings both from nigla and from Chassidus the idea of shluchis shalod and kamesei and the different levels of how he becomes a shliach. If he's only a shliach for the action, or is his whole hand become an extension of the mishaleach, or is it and his whole being becomes an extension? And the Rebbe actually was mechadish a fourth level and a fifth level in discussing this topic in the context of the idea of what a shliach is, which is a fascinating idea because what you have is that paradox that on one hand there's a certain independence, and yet you choose to represent a cause greater than yourself, which of course is the key to so much of life's, a key to solving so many of life's challenges, not to take yourself so seriously and realize it's not all about you, that you are here to serve a higher cause, which is the essence of what shlichus is all about. And as a result, what we have is a lesson to each one of us in our own way as we make our way through this world to be shluchim. And especially when we see people who've given and dedicated their lives on the front lines all over the world, wherever it may be, it's a very inspiring thing. For us personally to all re-embrace and renew our contract with this mission that we're all given, and the Rebbe, the Shliach of the Eibishter, to teach us what our Shlichus is in our time of Yefutzamay Nesecha Chusa, spreading Chassidus wherever we can in the farthest reaches of the world. And of course, as part of being a Fotzas HaTeira and Fotzas HaYadus, the spreading and dissemination of Teira and Yiddishkeit and mitzvahs in every possible way. We all have our sphere of influence. We all have people we connect with, we relate to, and that's where we have to use those faculties and those keiches, as the Rebbe says, that when a shliach uses his 10 faculties, shliach with 10 equals Mashiach. So essentially, we bring the fruition of what the Alter Rebbe explained, all the work in this world is to use our faculties to fulfill our shlichus. And when you bring those two together, you don't leave them potential, but you actualize your faculties in that shlichus. So then what we create is the Mashiach. As the Rebbe brings from Moira Naim, that everyone has a nitzutz, a spark of Mashiach within them. And when they live up to the potential for which they were sent, their mission to this world, they ignite, or they awaken, or they fan the flames of that spark. And when it collectively comes together, we have the Mashiach HaKloli, which is the actual Mashiach that will bring the Geula Amitis Vashlema to the entire world, both personal and global redemption. So, additionally, we're also in the week of Parshas Vayeitzei. Vayeitzei, this begins Parshas Vayeitzei. Vayeitzei Yaakov meBe'er Sheva, and of course connected to this theme, as the Iggeret Hakodesh explains, that Yosef Engel, by the way, it slipped me before. Rav Yosef Engel has in his Sfarim, Barichas, he talks about the different levels of shlichus. The Rebbe brings it in all the sichus, and I apologize, that slipped my mind the name. Sometimes you just have a lapse. And as the Rebbe, since I'm already mentioning it again, let me just say, when the Rebbe brings it, sometimes he says, Shluchis Shalom Kameise Mamish. Not just that you are like Shluchis Shalom Kameise, like someone, but it's Mamish, like a person standing in the place of the Mishaleach. And Mamish, it says in L'Kutei Torah Vayikra, he brings that Loshen. But one of the sichos that Rebbe's Magia, he actually wrote on the side that it says it in Shal Shuvas, Harivosh, and we went and found it, and then it was Zeichen. So it's also Niglas for him, the Loshen Mamish, which only adds to the increased bittul of a shliach to the Mishaleach. This is also connected to many sugis of Chassidus, and especially the sugi of Oyer and bittul Oyer, that there are many levels of bittul. It can be a level of bittul on a lower level, it can be a bittul that is more consuming, until a bittul that it becomes completely absorbing. You become a complete channel for the thing that you are bottled to, which of course the higher levels of shliach and mishaleach. As I mentioned, the 5 different levels that Rebbe speaks about. So in Vayeitzei, the theme is the same theme. The general theme, as the Eira Chaim explains, Vayeitzei Yaakov meBe'er Sheva, that what's Yaakov, Vayela Charona. Yaakov refers to the neshama of every Yid. Yaakov is made up of the letters Yud, Ekev. Yud goes on Chochmah, the neshama, the spark of the soul, like a Yud. That comes Ekev into the heel, that's the descent of the neshama down below. And where does it leave? It leaves Be'er Sheva, the fountain of 7, refers to the neshama as it is, the 7 midas, the 7 midas in Atzilus. The 7 attributes, divine attributes. So it goes from the fountain of 7, and where does it go? Charona. Charona comes from the word charein af, shalmokim, where God's wrath, a place of wrath, of darkness, of concealment, a hostile world, hostile to Be'er Sheva. So you have the complete antithesis, referring to the descent of the soul from the most brightest place, the fountain of 7, all the way to the darkest place. With the kavanah, of course, the intention is to transform that world through that's the shlichus of Yaakov, sent there by Yitzchak and Rivka, in order to build a family, which is what he does, a mitoshe shlema, a complete family, a wholesome family, and then return after 20 years, which is at the end of this parsha, Yaakov Hol he returns back to Be'er Sheva, back to Eretz Yisrael, back to Eretz Meguri of the land of his parents. So that encapsulates the mission of our lives. And as the parsha goes on, the dream that Yaakov had, and with the fears he had, the fears that he had, that he would be able to, how would he overcome this hostility of Charona, and the Sulam Mutzav Arza, which is the ladder that stands with its legs on the ground but reaches up in heaven, and blesses him and tells him, I will be with you and I will protect you. And not only will you survive, but Ufaratz Yom V'Kedma V'Tzafein V'Negba V'Hoya Zaracha Kafara Oretz, as it begins the pasuk, that your children will be like the dust of the earth, means spread. Ufaratz, spread to the Yom V'Kedma, east and west, Tzafein V'Negba, north and south, in every possible direction. which of course became a motto, an expression, the Nigun V'Faratzta, as the Rebbe in Tavshin, Beis Tammuz Tavshin Chai, and that period of time, in the first decade of the Rebbe's leadership, as it was, the first decade was coming to a close, especially when it went into Tavshin Chof, which was the 10 years from Tavshin Yud, the Rebbe made it into a powerful statement that that's the goal, is V'Faratzta Yom V'Kedim V'Tzafeinu V'Negba, which is more than just coming out intact and unscathed. It actually refers to the power and the ability to thrive, like we said before, Yisrael Min HaCheshach, like the message of Rosh Chodesh Kislev, that we come out from the darkness into an even a greater person. And this is our challenge, no matter what we go through, whether it's a loss, God forbid, whether it's a setback, whether it's a challenge, whatever it is that comes our way, our attitude is that that is exactly the shlichus you were sent for, and not just to survive, but you come out even stronger because the darkness becomes a springboard that allows you to reach greatest possible heights. And Dafka there, Yaakov builds his family, the Shvatim, from which all of us are derived from. So it's in our genes, it's in our DNA that we were born and bred. Where? By Lavan. And where Yaakov tended to the sheep of Lavan. And that Dafka there is where we are born and come out of that. Only Binyamin would be born later, Benyamin, born in Eretz Yisrael. But all the other Shvatim and Dinah were all born in Haran, and that becomes the foundations and the pillars of all the entire Jewish nation, from which we all derive from one of the 12 Shvatim. So as such, we all have it within us, this type of power to be able to, the resilience necessary and the ability to dig deeper and become greater and stronger, which is of course essentially the way that it's captured in Jewish history like no other way, where you see this again and again, this cycle of going through the difficulties and coming out even stronger. And where we stand today, we don't need to go through all these halamas any longer. We have freedom. We can do as we wish, and we are free to celebrate and honor our Yiddishkeit in every possible way. The challenge today is not to be apathetic. And the goal is that after these thousands of years of exile and concealment, that we shall finally come to the Gula Mitzvah Shlema, just like Yaakov comes out of Haran, returns to Eretz Yisrael, so too will we all return. Many Jews have already gone to Eretz Yisrael, Begashmis. But then all of us going to Eretz Yisrael in the Gula HaMitzvah Shlema. What message does Thanksgiving have for us? Being that this Thursday is also Thanksgiving, and I don't want to mix it with the other days, because Rosh Chodesh Kislev, Kinnus HaShluchim, Vayeitzei. But since the Rebbe did speak about Thanksgiving more than once, the Fabrengen, I want to refer you to episode 138, where I quote the Sikha, the actual Sikha. So I'm not going to go over that whole Sikha. You could look it up in episode 138. Here's an opportunity to refer you to all our rich resources connected to MyLife Chassidus Applied. Now we have already 188 episodes up, which is available at meaningfullife.com/mylife. The archives, of course, every week the new episode with other resources, essays that are written with the essay context. And I just want to make a point, because some of you have asked, when you go to the video and you click on the YouTube link to the video where it's residing, you have timestamps, so you don't have to listen to the whole hour or hour and 15 minutes. You can actually go to the topic and just click on the timestamp, and it'll take you straight to that place. You can also download it as a podcast. All that information is available at meaningfullife.com/mylife. And there's also the availability there and the opportunity, which I encourage you to use, is to ask your questions, your anonymous questions, totally anonymous, comments, any other feedback. If you have anything you'd like to add, any sources that we can address here, would be deeply appreciated. And I thank you so much for the questions. They've really actually accelerated in the last month or two, for whatever reason. That's only good news. So I have right now, I believe, almost 7 or to 10 episodes of questions that we just simply can't cover everything in 1 week. So I want you to bear with me and have patience. If you don't hear your question addressed this week, it will definitely be addressed. We just have a whole backlog, and I try to address the things, try to do them in a way that are either relevant to the time that we're in, or bunch them together if they're in the same family or in the same category of discussion. Obviously, there are some recurrent themes that keep coming back and forth, back again, so we address them from different angles. And of course, the archive is a tremendous resource, because there, as I said, you can find literally all the topics we've addressed, very broken down by search, by keywords or topic. Should be very easy to find. Okay, that was a little station break for a little housekeeping information. With that, I go back to Thanksgiving. Since we're trying to connect it all, Thanksgiving lately, I've seen a lot of studies. They talk about gratitude, how gratitude is actually good for your health and good for your psyche and good for your well-being in general. Now, this is no chiddush for anyone that learns Torah. Torah is the concept of saying thank you. There was even a korban teda. A teda was brought. He brought a thank you offering. The idea of bikurim was a thank you offering, which was essentially bringing from the first fruit when they came into Israel to thank Hashem. The first fruit that they bore in the fields was given as a gift, all representing the idea of Heda, Teda and Heda. We say every morning, Moida Ani, Moidim Anachnu Lach. Heidu. Yehuda comes from the word Hoida, Oidelacha. So the concept of thanking, the concept of acknowledging, the concept of gratitude is built in so many places in Judaism. So of course the basic menschlichkeit of it is obvious. Someone does something for you, you say thank you. The Gemara even says, Chomer lamara tivusa l'shakya. Someone brings you wine, a waiter waits on you and delivers wine to you. So the wine taka belongs to the owner, meaning God, in this case. But tivus l'shakya, you still say tivus, you say thank you to the waiter. He didn't do it, he didn't create it. All he's doing is being a shliach. But because he is actually bringing to you, you say thank you. You saw this by the Rebbe. Every time he was driven, you saw the secretaries who drove him all the time. Every time was thank you when they opened the door for him after they drove him. And you saw this thank you, he said it to Rabbi Mentik when he would pour the wine for the Rebbe at the beginning of a Fabrengen. Wherever you went, there was always this acknowledgement. That's his basis of Torah. But if you think deeper into it, what is the deeper lesson? It means you're not self-absorbed and a sense of entitlement that, no, I don't have to thank anybody, I deserve it all. It's an acknowledgement, a humble acknowledgement that we're not self-made and that we acknowledge there's something greater. It's an awareness of that. You'll see people who are rude, who are selfish, who are narcissistic, and they don't thank. And I don't just mean the lip service. They don't thank. They just don't even feel the need to do so. It's a reflection of a self-absorbed person, which is that what Chassidus calls the yeshus, that it makes you self-contained and there's no breathing, there's no give and take. So Thanksgiving, which the first Americans that came to this country and they thanked and they celebrated a day, which is more than just a parade and sales and so on, it represents something which is fundamentally a universal theme, and that's why the Rebbe mentioned it. It doesn't have any necessarily religious connotation. It is essentially the idea of humans thanking God for the miracles and for their survival and for the divine providence of leading them wherever they are, to be able to live healthy lives, to live peaceful lives, to be able to bring up their children in the spirit of their values and system without anyone else imposing. And this was, of course, a big thing back then, and even today, it's something not to be taken for granted. So Thanksgiving has tremendous lessons in just the basic principles. And today we know it's more than just saying thank you, it actually makes you healthier. Because it makes you feel, it makes you a person that's breathing. It's not just everything me, which is essentially absorbing. Imagine just inhaling and never exhaling. It ultimately starts imploding within you, all that you're taking in. Life is about giving and taking, and it's about someone gives, you say thank you. There's a type of cycle that works with that, and that is very healthy for us. Besides for the obligation and the menschlichkeit and the etiquette, the proper courtesy to be able to acknowledge someone that has done something for you. There's more to say on the topic, but I wanted to just bring it into this picture. And of course, in our case, talk about Rosh Chodesh Kislev, we say thank you to Hashem for giving us the Rebbe, for giving us back the Rebbe. In the classic story, in the famous story the Rebbe then wrote about the Zohar with Rab Chia, that wrote to one of the Rabbi Hecht. He wrote to him about why did this all happen. So he noted and referred to the Zohar in the introduction where he talks about Rab Chia, who there was the consideration to keep him in heaven, take him to heaven and stay there, and Rashbi implored God to give him more time because he has a mission to fulfill in this world. So we say thank you, and we continue to say thank you because the blessing is that the Rebbe, and I speak personally for myself, I would not be who I am today, not be doing what I'm doing here, and I could believe I could say this for the thousands of shluchim that are here this weekend, and wherever they are, and their respective locations, gave us a rebel without a cause, gave us the cause. Obviously, each of us have our soul and we have our choices to be made, but when you have a mentor and one who gives you direction and inspiration and leads the way and gives you the courage to follow your inner voice and to follow that inner purpose and mission for which God sent us here, there's a great acknowledgement necessary for that. And it's an acknowledgement that's deeper than just saying thank you. The thank you translates into action. And I think every one of us, as on Rosh Chodesh Kislev, is another lesson that we have to look into ourselves and say, thank you for the gifts we were given. How are we using them? Because for every gift means there's a responsibility. Responsibility is also a gift. It's an honor to be able to serve. It's an honor to be able to use the faculties, the opportunities, the resources each of us was blessed with. So we have a lesson from that as well. With that, let us go to some other questions. And the question that is asked about pride and ego. What is the line between healthy pride and arrogance? What is the line between feeling proud of something you've done to being all full of yourself, egotistic, and not realizing that everything is from Hashem? I find that sometimes I worry that I'm too full of myself. So I keep telling myself that I didn't really do anything special and that it's all Hashem. But on the other hand, I did work hard, put in effort, and I'm proud and want recognition. What is considered ego? What is the proper level of pride in your accomplishments? Okay, very fundamental question, also connected very clearly to what we're discussing about gratitude. Where do you come in? Where does God come in? And how do we balance the two? I want to refer you to episode 58, where this topic was discussed. But obviously I will take some additional points that I didn't maybe emphasize that enough, and complement some more information, more instruction regarding this topic. So let's dispel a certain myth. Let's start with this myth. The purpose, even though it says in the Torah, we were created to serve our Maker. Ani nevresi l'shamesh eskeni. I was created to serve eskeni as my master, or keni can be my nest, the one who created me, my owner. Sometimes like kinyan from the word kinyan. There's a girsa that says, Ani lo nivresi el l'shamesh eskeni. When there's even stronger, I was not created for anything but to serve. And in Sfarim it says that when it says Ani nivresi l'shamesh means, yes, you're created for it, but when you're saying I wasn't lo nivra ella, that means that it's absolutely kuva, meaning it's built-in, inherent, and innate, and there's no way around it. You say something is created for something, you could say it's created for something, but it could also have another agenda. It could be another option, perhaps. There may be an exception in certain areas. You say ani loy, you're saying completely. So one could take the impression from that we're nothing, we're nobodies. And our job is to nullify ourselves, nullify our egos, nullify a sense of self, and that's that. But we also find the Torah says, chayecha koidmin, which means that when there's a situation, for example, and there's only enough water for one person, and you control the water, and not everybody can drink, who do you give the water to? You may want to give it to someone else because you're very noble. You have to take care of your life first. How's that shtim? Because the point of serving God is not obliterating, annihilating oneself. It's recognizing that the self is not self-contained, that the self is created in order to serve, and that makes the self even more powerful. When a person is a shliach, they don't become less, they become more. Because now, not only are they channeling whatever they're capable of, because a person can do a lot of great things, but there's a limit. But now because of their bittul, because they've submitted themselves and offered themselves to serve a greater cause than themselves, they become an extension of the greater cause. And as such, it doesn't make you more ego, but it makes your identity far greater, but not precisely because you're not serving yourself. So ironically, you could say that when a person has bittul, healthy bittul, and they submit themselves and surrender to a greater cause than themselves, in many ways, their self is even more enhanced than the person who just takes care of himself. So ostensibly, someone takes care of himself, he's a very important person, but it's only as strong as he is. But when you dedicate to a cause greater than you are, you become a transparent channel for that cause. So therefore, they come very well together. If it's pride and arrogance based on, oh, I'm a great guy, I'm better than other people, then it's not appropriate. But if it's a pride that says, I am proud of the fact that Hashem has chosen me, and that I can have the schus, the merit to fulfill His mission, that's a very good pride. But not arrogant pride. So absolutely we exist, but we exist as a channel, an instrument, if you wish, a vehicle for something greater to be channeled through us into this world. Now, of course, we have to work on that. So when you say you find yourself and you worry sometimes you're full self, so you have to tell yourself, I don't really anything special, all it's Hashem. Well, that's the work we have to do. Famous sikhs from the Rebbe on the topic, where we say that when a person asks for Gashmias, on Rosh Hashanah and other times we pray that we should have health, we should have livelihood, we should have our physical needs met. So you could think of it, you know what? You're being selfish on Rosh Hashanah, you're thinking about your physical needs. The Rebbe has the beautiful sikha that he spoke about Chana, the Haftarah we say in Chana, where she went to beg Hashem in the Beis HaMikdash for a child. And Eli saw her mumbling and voice not coming out. He thought she was drunk. So he wanted to basically reprimanded her for coming here as a drunk. And she said, I'm not drunk. I'm pouring my soul out to God for a child. So the Rebbe asked the question, what Eli didn't understand, that a woman may come to Beis HaMikdash asking for something. Why did he think this was? He said, you're drunk with Gashmis. And she was saying, no, it's not for me. I'm pouring my heart to God because God wants me to have children. So I'm asking God, you want me to have children. You want me to bring children into this world. You want them to serve you. You have to bring me the children. So it's not because you're asking for selfish reasons. It's because Hashem Himself said, I want you to be successful. I want you to be healthy. I want you to be blessed. I want you to be prosperous. And be wise to know how to use it for the higher purposes, which is exactly what happened. She was blessed with Shmuel Hanovi, and she gave him to Hashem. As a prophet, he became God's man. So Eli was saying, he didn't understand why he's staying in the Beis HaMikdash. She asked for ruchnis, no gashmis. And he brings it from the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov, that even when when a Eid asks for gashmis, it's really the nitzutz kedusha, the sparks of kedusha that are inside those physical items. Sometimes we're aware of it, sometimes we're not. But that's the avenge, that we have to understand that the goal here is not to deprive ourselves, not to forego. The goal is to get all these things and understand as part of what you need to have in your life. But you realize it's not because of you that you're getting, because that itself is what God wants, that you should be blessed with all these things, which is like the Rambam says, why the Chachamim, why would they desire Mashiach? Because they learned Sava Chacham for Mashiach because they wanted the rewards. They wanted to have a time where there would be peace, there'd be health, there'd be all the prosperity and the comfort, so they could sit and learn Torah b'menucha and not have to worry about gzeiros or about famine or about other daigas, other worries and concerns and anxieties that don't allow us the peace of mind and the peace of heart to serve properly. Next question, forgiveness. Why should I forgive someone who did or does really bad things to me? I know we are supposed to learn from Hashem to forgive, but it's obviously not the same. Hashem is Hashem, and it's easy for Him to do anything. We learn all about the importance of forgiving and let it go, but what do I do if I can't? Is that okay? Number one, is that okay? According to Torah, does a person have to forgive? Number two, how can I forgive someone who did something majorly wrong to me? So let me refer you where I spoke about this topic at length in episodes 16, 36, and 84. That's first of all. Probably whatever I'm going to say here was said then, but since the question is asked, I'll be brief. But again, I refer you to look there. You'll have a more broader, more comprehensive response. There's entire laws in Hilchos Erev Yom Kippur, in Shulchan Aruch, and including the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, Hilchos Mechila, Erev Yom Kippur, Hilchos Erev Yom Kippur, the laws of forgiving, the laws that we do before Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement, and you keep Purim, when we want God to forgive us. So there's also obligations. We have to forgive each other. And in very exhaustive detail, especially in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, he describes the details of the obligation. How, when you hurt somebody, you have to go and forgive, ask for forgiveness. Once, twice, 3 times, with others as well. Obviously a sincere request. From the point of view of the person who has been hurt, he has an obligation to forgive. But he does make 2 exceptions. That if, not be cruel and not forgive. The 2 exceptions are, 1, if it's going to hurt you, you have a right to withhold forgiveness. Number 2, if you feel that person who did the harm, who harmed you, you don't feel that the person has gone through enough remorse. Their heart is not broken enough. It's interesting. The only place you find that a person has the control, a right to actually determine that. But that's the right of someone who's been hurt by another person. And of course, the obligation is to ultimately find a way to forgive. But there are these exceptions. So it's more complicated than just saying anything goes and everything can be forgiven. It's not true. First of all, there has to be sincerity on the part of the one who asks. Number 2, there are circumstances where you can withhold. Not because of being cruel or being obstinate or just trying to win or because of pride, but because for the good of the experience, for that person and for you. But at the end of the day, forgiveness is a healer both for the person who has done the hurting and the person who has been hurt. Because it completes the circle, as I've discussed a number of times. Those episodes. Mechila also comes from the word circle, mochel. So it completes the circle, because when someone hurts somebody, it's like you break the circle, the connection. Think of it like a circuit that's been broken. When you have love and kindness and relationship, the circle is complete. There's a flow between 2 people. If that flow has been severed in some way, we need to complete it. But that takes work. If something serious was done, especially, the person who did the hurting has to have remorse. They can't just be in denial. And the person who's been hurt has to also open themselves up to being able to forgive. Just like Hashem forgave us after the Chet HaEgel, which is of course Yom Kippur. Salachti kidvarecha. Slach lanu, machal lanu, kaper lanu, we ask for the 3 different expressions. Forgive, the different meanings, but it's not for right now, but they're basically 3 different dimensions of forgiveness. So we too, ben adam l'chaveri, also have that obligation both ways, with the exceptions that I mentioned. So it's not just about, yes, everything is forgiven. It's a process of healing, but it's a process of letting yourself, compelling you to go out of your comfort zone. Your comfort zone may be, you know what, you hurt me, I cut off, I won't talk to you the rest of my life. That's not derech of Torah. We spoke about before, the whole point is to go out of the yesh. It says, G'deli ma'aset tzadikim and ma'aset shamayim v'oretz. So Chassidus explains, why is the work of tzaddikim is greater than the work of creating heaven and earth? Nothing can create, only God creates. How could we do anything greater than creation? And the answer is such a beautiful answer. Because Hashem creates, it's yesh ma'ayin. From a state of non-existence, He creates something, existence. Which of course is a big thing from our point of view. It's only b'chei kabeda, only the Eibishter God can do it. From God's point of view, He can do anything. He's beyond yesh, He's beyond ayin, so He can do that. Tzaddikim come, righteous people come, and they make from the yesh ayin. They're taking the yesh that God created from non-existence and they're turning it back into non-existence. What does non-existence mean, as I explained? Not obliterating or annihilating, God forbid. Oziv tazevime, working with it and turning it into a being, not a self-absorbed yesh, but an existence that's aligned with and being an instrument and a channel and a vehicle for divine will. So you have a hand. You can use it for neutral purposes. You can use it, God forbid, for negative things. You can use it to be a yad mechalek tzedakah. Your hand has now become an extension of fulfilling a mitzvah called charity, helping another person. In a sense, you are becoming a vehicle for God's chesed in this world. And the same thing with all the other attributes that we have as we align ourselves. So it's not that you become obliterated. On the contrary, you become the real purpose for which you were created. So Mechila, therefore, is so much part and parcel of bridging, of healing the schism and the split that was severed when someone hurts another person. And it goes both ways. The one that hurt has to ask for forgiveness and correct what they did wrong, with remorse and all that comes with that. And the one that was hurt doesn't want to remain hurt. You don't want to remain a victim the rest of your life and feel you're carrying a grudge, or you feel that this person is invaded and invaded your psyche and just you're consumed with it, or you just can't let go. You want to heal. You want to make as if it didn't happen, not in a denial way, but in a real way. So you need to work on the healing, and the conditions are also part of that. The conditions are helping us get to a place like that. So we take that attitude. It's not just a matter of, do I forgive someone who really did bad things? It may take a process, but there is a process, and we want to heal. We want to be in a place where we don't have to carry any weight of us hurting someone or carrying the hurt that someone else has done to us. Okay. Next question. Completely a different area. That's the Golem of Prague. What is the story with the Maharal's Golem? I know that it is embroiled in controversy, with many authorities saying that it is a myth, an urban legend. Did the Rabbeim say anything definitive about it? So we all know the story. If not briefly, it says in the time of the Maharal in Prague, the 18th century, in Prague, in Czechoslovakia, there were pogroms and there were blood libels, and the Maharal, using Shemesh Akdeshim, holy names, created a golem out of dust and earth. He created you want to call it a dummy, whatever you want to call a golem. The Gemara, we have the idea of a concept of using names. It's somewhat emulating what God did, but God created a human being with intelligence and free will. The golem didn't have any free will. And he was meant to be a shliach. No comparison to the mention of shliach I mentioned before, but a shliach in the sense to serve the golem's needs, the Maharal's needs and the Jewish community, to protect them. So for a period of time, that was there. And this became a story, a legend. Some even say the Havdalah of Havdalah, Frankenstein, was built on this legend, based on this. But as you write accurately, it is embroiled in controversy. Some saying the whole thing is a baba mais. The question is, well, how do we know? So interestingly, there's a letter, an answer from the Rebbe to somebody, and I'm going to read it. The Rebbe is referring to a kuntris, where a person, where the author of a journal was trying to throw doubts in the idea that the Maharal actually formed his golem. So the Rebbe says like this, I'm going to translate. Regarding the book of Neflois, of wonders, of the Maharal and his letters that you mention, I did not delve into them, therefore I can't give an opinion at all to their veracity. And regarding the actual thing, the idea, the Rebbe says Iker, he underlines it twice. The primary theme that with this subject at hand, which is the Maharal's creation of this golem, of this, the so-called man of the earth. Ba'atzmi shamaiti, I myself, underlined twice, I myself heard from my father-in-law, Shara Hanishar Memena, that he saw that the remains of the golem in Prague when he went up there in the shul, the Alten shul of the Maharal. Ba'aliyas Beis HaKnesses the Maharal Prague, when he went in the Beis HaKnesses of the Maharal Prague, and he spoke about it with his father, the Rebbe Nishmo Seiden, which is the Rebbe Rashab V'chulu, meaning etc., underlined. So the Rebbe is bearing direct witness. He heard from his father-in-law that he saw the remains, and that he actually spoke about it with his father, the Rebbe Rashab. The Frierdiker Rebbe spoke about it. The Rebbe continues, the questions in what you have enclosed here regarding what it says in that sefer, in other words, you're basically challenging it, the questions you have on this account, that there was a Maharal, that there was a golem that built by the Maharal, are at all not relevant to this primary point. Because many years, well, I would say a number of years, number of decades, I should say, before the publication of that book that you're referring to, where it talks about the Golem, it was known, again underlined twice, it was known and Mefursim publicized that the Maharal built a Golem. The non-Jews, and even by non-Jews, they also knew about it. The Rebbe then says, and delve into the Sfarim in the different libraries as they are cited in various encyclopedias. Yeah. And then the Rebbe says, return what was sent to him, he should return it. The Rebbe then finally, in the last paragraph, says, Hapsak din b'Shulchan Aruch. There's a psak din in the Shulchan Aruch, the law. In all your ways you should know God. What was increased by the one who's asking this question in Torah and Mitzvahs through all this clarification of the above, of his challenging this whole Golem issue? In other words, it's just an academic exercise, in which the Rebbe Befedish says, I bear witness what I heard from my father-in-law, and says that even before the Sefer was known, even by non-Jews, and bottom line question, what difference does it make anyway in your Torah and Mitzvahs? Everything's b'chol derech hachadeyo. Just a common type of way of the Rebbe approaching something. You can talk about something, and is it bringing any better benefit one way or the other? Well, I think this is pretty unequivocally clear that the Rebbe is bearing the witness that he heard from his father-in-law, the Frierdiker Rebbe, and that lays to rest that absolutely the Rebbeim do have something definitive to say about it. More details we don't know. We do know that the Rebbe Nishma Seiden was not happy that the Rebbe Frierdiker Rebbe went up there, and he says that it affected him. It doesn't say how, but it said it affected him because they say that Maharal, once he put the remains of the Golem there, they say that he made a takana that nobody should go up there because it had a certain kedusha that now is no longer there, because the Shemesh gave it a certain life. So it's a more complicated topic which is beyond the scope of our discussion right now, but I just wanted to read that to you. So we continue on with some follow-ups. Follow-up number 1 is regarding last week we spoke sadly about the event of a young man, a young father, husband passing away, and the prayers that were said. So someone wrote, Tehillim is not in vain when Hashem's answer is no, which is what I mentioned last week, that sometimes Hashem says no, that doesn't mean that the prayers weren't heard. So he asked, so this fellow is writing, or this individual, just to add a useful fact which somehow helped me pull through when I was told that all the Tehillim that was said around the world all goes into account of the nifter, of the person who passed away, and his chus. All his davening went on, so there's no doubt benefiting his neshama. So it's an additional point. Thank you for that. Maybe see Hashem's answers as yes, right? Amen to that. And thank you for your wonderful episodes. Hatzlach. Okay, so I'm reading a comment from last week's. On a very different note, in one of my classes, this is a Wednesday night class, I give a weekly Wednesday night class on different themes. So a few weeks ago, I spoke about the recent exposés, the recent headlines around all forms of inappropriate harassment, sexual harassment in the workplace by people one powerful than another. So someone wrote a comment that I'm going to read that. I make a hefsek ben pasha lepasha, but this is part of follow-up, and I'd like to cover as much ground as possible. So let me read this. Dear Rabbi Jacobson, I listened to your podcast addressing the sexual harassment issue and agreed with everything you said. I would like to add something that to me is like the 10,000-pound white elephant in the living room. But it is a politically incorrect observation, to say the least. Let me lead into it by an admittedly rough analogy. Let us say that there's a society in which it is a very common thing for cars to get broken into. But let's say that the people in this society also have a common practice of leaving valuables on their car seats instead of putting them away in the trunk of the car when they park their cars. The victims complain about being robbed, and rightly so. It is against the law to steal, and there's no excuse for this unlawful act. The many victims are outraged, and rightly so. And yet, in this society, it is considered unacceptable to suggest that part of the solution is for people to keep their valuables in their trunks and not in plain view of the potential robbers. Excuse me. I think my point is self-explanatory, But I will add that I have the full sympathy for the victims and think the perpetrators should be punished. But because we are living in a society where modesty is not practiced, more of these incidents happen than need to. Men's lust is stirred up by women dressing in a provocative way, maximizing their appeal, etc. Yet they are offended if this is pointed out to them, saying it is blaming the victim. But it's not. It's just stating an obvious point. To go back to my analogy, the crime of stealing remains a crime, whether the valuables were left in plain view or not. But there would be less break-ins if the valuables were kept in the trunk. I'm not saying that women should cover themselves from head to toe, as some Arabs do. Just that, if we're going to have that revolution that you suggest to sanctify intimacy between the sexes, let it include increased modesty as one aspect of the overall plan. I have nothing to add. Thank you for your comment. And yes, we have always be stated with sensitivity, because you don't want ever give an impression that you're blaming a victim, even if there's an issue. It has one thing, nothing to do with the next. It's completely two separate stories. I'm just emphasizing that. I apologize for my congestion and cough. Try to get through this smoothly. Shidduchim crisis. So we're talking about this topic every few weeks. I bring it up again because more questions come in, more comments. So I just want to cover it. I like to not keep it hanging. I always feel like something more to be said. So this is a follow-up to episodes 169, 170, and 171, where we talked about it. And as well as 186, where I addressed also some topics. So here's a few other points that some people have made. I think this is, as I said, a follow-up to 186, where I read some of the comments, and now I'm going to read some more. I think those that are in the Shidduch market are way too selective and bypass many potential Shidduchim dates. For example, some families are no-nos. No one will touch them because they are considered damaged material, either because there are health issues in the family, or status in the community is not stellar, or their status in the community is not stellar, etc. Another example, some from birth FFB, from birth families will not marry children of Bali Tshuva. And this person writes, regarding this point, I think we shouldn't judge a potential shidduch candidate by his or her family, rather we should judge them individually. Secondly, I can understand why a from birth person may not want to marry a Baal Tshuva. There's a different background, etc. However, children of Baal Tshuvas have the same background as FFBs, and actually FFBs, they learned in the same measures from birth. So for Gezha, meaning someone coming from a family of observant Jews and from the Chabad families, for someone from that family, not wanting to marry a child of a BT is nonsense and arrogance, just my opinion. Okay, let me address this. Again, this is a topic I've addressed a number of times. I referred to which episodes and probably some more as well. I think the first thing I want to say is this, is I do find that very often people priorities when it comes to Shidduch are very distorted and are very skewed. You know what the Yuseidus are. Briefly, even though every person has to find someone there that appeals to them and relates to them, whether it's a man, a woman to man, but the foundations of a healthy shidduch is a partner in life that you can trust. Someone with midas tevis. Someone that you feel has similar values. You have to look at the whole package. You never look at one detail. A nose, an eye, a particular thing. If something is really disturbing you, address it. Maybe something important. But not tofeldika things, superficial things. It's the overall package. Is this person a mensch? Person you can build a family with. There's so many unknowns in life. There's so many things that will come up as life goes on, as marriage goes on. Things you cannot predict. You want to know that the person is your partner, that whatever comes up we can deal with together. And that God gave us enough wisdom to be able to figure out in a dating process. You don't have to find out 30 years from now that. You could sense it if you keep your focus. Unfortunately, there's so much focus on materialism, on purely looks and that's it, on is there enough financial security. So all of that has some value, but you have to remember what is an ikka and what's a tofel. What's primary and what's secondary. That is, I think, one of the big problems today, where people are selective based on the wrong criteria. As far as Baal Tshuva and this, we've spoken about this a number of times. If one goes al pitei and al pichsidis, a neshama is a neshama is a neshama. The fact that some people went through a bizarre twist and turn, they didn't grow up in a Torah observant home, and then later they came to it, case by case. If if their midas are right and their children match, I don't see any issue with it at all. If you have a particular concern, address it. I've seen so-called people that are brought up in the culture of a fruma culture, and those that came from the other culture and became fruma, beautiful shidduchim. I've seen people in the same field, people both grow up in Shem mitzvahs, and that doesn't necessarily always work out. So we have many variations here. Just to discriminate by prejudice and bias alone is not a Torah Chassidic way altogether. You never find from the Rebbe that as a condition. If there are factors to address, fine. Sometimes some people are just not made for each other. But that is true no matter what. That's a reality that's based on the factors in chemistry and other stuff like that. And your point about children of Baalei Tshuva that went through the whole system, I totally agree. Now, yes, some people say, well, they weren't born betahara, those parents. Or other issues like that. So first of all, God decides what is Tara in a world of Tenekah Shenishbu. And we have to have Amunah and B'tachin, and it cannot just be based on our own comfort zones. This obviously is a case-by-case story, and I don't want to just make a generality, but I just wanted to mention that as well. We're going to talk more about these topics, but I'll do it step by step. Okay, I don't want to cover it all in one shot, because there's always more stuff coming in, so it's always best to move along with this. So let's now move to the Chassidus question of the week. And that is King David's revenge on Shimi. To the venerable and luminous sage, the wise one, Rabbi Jacobson. I'm reading it as it is, but can I tell you? I find it amusing. Yeah. Being that you're writing anonymous, I'm sure you're trying to make a little sarcasm. But hey, you know what? If I can make it in besimcha, in a time when sometimes if we don't have so much simcha, I feel very honored to do so. So feel free. Obviously, I reserve the right. If you get too flowery with these, colorful with these titles, I may not read them all. But so far, so good. I have a question about the story referenced in the beginning of Iggeret Hakodesh, Siman Chaf Hey. Yeah. The Alter Rebbe brings the story of King David, not responding to Shimi, who cursed him. Yeah. In Siman Chaf Hey, in the beginning, in Tanya, just to read the exact lashon, that's exactly what he's talking about. He's talking there about anger, getting anger, the famous Iggeret Hakodesh. Why does it say Kol HaKeis Ki Lo Eved Aved Zara? I'm amplifying on the question. I just want to read the Tanya inside for context. So the Alter Rebbe says, "V'atam muvam liyedei bina," because a person who gets angry means the emunah, his faith, nistalka, so-called expired from him, disappeared from him temporarily. Because if he really believed that everything comes from Hashem, he wouldn't be angry. And even though a person has free choice to curse someone, or to hit him, or to hurt him in some way, and he will be responsible, b'dini adam and b'dini shemayim, on rei b'chirose, on his bad choice. Nevertheless, ala nizek, on the person who was hurt, it's already came from heaven. Nigzar min hashkvar, nigzar min hashamayim. It was decreed from heaven that he should be hurt. And there are many shluchim the Eibishter could have. And moreover, even during that male fact that he's being hit or hurt in some way, or being cursed, even there God's power is manifesting in the one that's doing the cursing. And he brings the raya, Ki Hashem Omer Lo Yikalel. He says about David HaMelech that when Shimi cursed him, Shimi was from the supporters of Shaul, and when David became king, he cursed him. So David said his people wanted to kill Shimi for his cursing a king. It's a merida b'malchus. So David said, no, it's come from Hashem said it. So the Alter Rebbe says, V'heichen omer l'Shimi. Where did Hashem say it to Shimi? So clearly, David HaMelech knew, because there's no way that he could have said it without Hashem allowing him to do that. He says, this machshavet that fell on Shimi's mind, to curse in his heart and in his mind, came from Hashem and from God's speaking, Mechai, that he gave life to the spirit of Shimi, but that while he was speaking these words on David, it was Hashem speaking through him. That's how David believed. Because if Hashem's spirit and words would one moment be removed from Shimi, he wouldn't be able to speak at all. Amazing piece in Tanya. So let's go back now to the question. So the questioner is asking, here's my question. The Alter Rebbe brings this story with Shimi to demonstrate that the proper approach to those that harm is to realize that they are merely messengers and conveyors of Hashem's will. And while they will be punished on high for their wrongdoing, our focus has to be on recognizing that it was Hashem's will. My question is this: why then? My question is, why then did King David, while on his deathbed, which years later, instruct Shlomo to avenge his honor by killing Shimi? Certainly that seems to show that he did hold a grudge against Shimi. And while he was able to retain his composure and contain his anger against him at the time, he ultimately sought to destroy him via Shlomo. So it seems to contradict what it says in Tanya. Very good question. I looked around to see if anyone addresses it. I haven't found, maybe there is, if someone has a comment. But the truth is, if you really look into the story, the answer is clear. First, on the most basic level, if he really carried, why didn't he allow him to be killed? There was a good justify. He wasn't going to kill him. His people were going to kill him. It's a merida b'malchus, al pidin. Al pidin, David HaMelech, you could say David HaMelech says, not that I have anything against him. He's being murdered in the king. Melech shamachal al kveide ein kveide machal. When a king forgives on his covet, is not forgiven because it's not his covet. Not like a Talmud Chacham who, so to speak, personifies Torah. Torah delay, it's his Torah, so he can forgive. A melech is the covet of Hashem. And the people of David HaMelech, Anshe David, wanted to kill Shimi, didn't let him. So if he did carry a grudge, why didn't he let them right then and then? Because the Alter Rebbe is saying the right thing. David HaMelech recognized that it's coming from Hashem. But at the end of the day, there was a merida b'malchus. So once David got away from the personal, meaning he did not carry anything, then he said at the end of the day, this is now the time that because of the merida b'malchus, he does deserve the punishment. Like it says, Rei b'chirosei. Not because I personally offended him, but I personally accepted the curse because that's what Hashem wanted him to do. That's one point I want to make. The second thing is this, the Mefarshim, I think the Targum or the Targumim there explain why Taka didn't he let Shimi be killed. So one of the reasons given is because Shimi would later give birth to the family that would come Mordechai, HaYehudi, Mordechai and Esther, Ben Shimi. Had he been killed, Mordechai would never have the children that would come out of him. And David saw by Nevuah that Mordechai had to come from him. But that just brings a question, if that's the case, though, so it has nothing to do with necessarily him being composed and not being angry, is because he recognized that. No, but it's still a good answer. Because that gufa, that he recognized that he was able to control his anger and his being upset, that he cursed him, and have the composure, knowing that he has to give children, you could have said he got so angry he didn't even think about him having about the children that have to come from him. So that gufa that David could do that is an absolute raya, proof to the Alter Rebbe, as the Alter Rebbe says, that because Hashem, it came from Hashem. And the fact that the end later, once he gave birth, and Mordechai would be able to, because Shimi already gave birth to his offspring, who would give birth to Mordechai, then he was able to allow him to be killed due to the merida b'malchus. That's how I would explain it. If anybody has any comments or thoughts, feel free to add to that. Let us go to the MyLife essays, and those are 3 essays. And the first one in Hebrew, Making Time Count by Uriah Tzur, age 21, Beit Shemesh, Israel. I must say, this essay was an excellent essay. I'm not even sure why we're reading it at this point. Seems to me it should have been in the top 10. and I have to look into that because sometimes these essays fall out of order, but really good essay, a very powerful overview of making time count, what exactly is about time, and using it in the modern context where people today, we have so much time and yet we say we have no time. Technology has freed up so much time. It brings the famous analogy where people came complaining to Rav that they're very tight in their house, they have no room. So the Rav gave a suggestion. You should move a goat into your house. They did, and you can imagine what kind of bahola there was. If there was no room, now it was impossible. The goat was everywhere. Then later, when they removed the goat, they suddenly realized they have room. So the writer writes, ask yourself, how many goats do you have? How many goats do you need to move into your house, into your time, into your day, before you know how good it is? Goes on to speak about the free of time, and then the free time we have and how we waste it, but explains it in a very beautiful way in 3 sections. What is time and its personality, bringing the different opinions of time. Is it a creation, like the Alter Rebbe says, name of the Magid, or like the Tzaddik from Tzvi Hirsch Mezidishov, who says that time is not a creation. The Rebbe has a letter about that. And bringing Einstein and the theories of time, really analyzing time. And then second section is about the value of time and how we use it. And the third is actual practical steps and advice of what we can do to improve our time management, our use of time. Really good essay, worth reading. It's in Hebrew. And of course he brings examples of the using of time in creation, Sfiras HaEmer, the counting of the Emer, Avram Avinu, Shana Mu'beres is in a leap year, and with very practical suggestions and advice. I found it a very stimulating read and very well worth reading, especially all of us deal with this issue. The next essay is Being of Two Minds, Chassidus and Neuroscience, Mike Perkins, age 61, Columbia, Missouri. And he addresses our dilemma. One of the great questions is how we should live our life. No matter how we decide that question, the outcome will be dependent on the choices we make. In fact, the choices we make ultimately are the answer. Each day provides us with a bewildering amount of choices from which to choose. But what is the right choice? And he goes into different psychological and philosophical approaches to this, and then the background, and then finally starts bringing the whole picture. Mankind has a long history of finding the right reason to do the wrong thing and making excuses for our behavior, ultimately leading to what he calls the Chassidus of Neuroscience. Also a very good essay, and called the Neuroscience of Tanya, and a very original way of bringing out and a bunch of study aids to Tanya in this context of the Neuroscience of Tanya. And finally, essay number 3, Hoarding versus Letting Go, by Vicky O'Brien, age 53, Albany, New York. Searching for the proper attitude toward acquisition, using lessons from leaving Egypt and Chassidus. Depending on the context, Vicky writes, hoarding may either be either a problem or a necessary resort. We live in a consumeristic society which encourages buying and collecting. Animals, humans included, have hoarding instincts to survive harsh times like winter or famine. But such acquisition can be the key to downfall as well. In this essay, I will use Torah and Chassidus to help determine the difference between beneficial excessive acquisition, hoarding, and letting go of superfluous things. And goes on to do exactly that. And excess baggage can be physical, intellectual, spiritual, emotional. And talks about, really breaks it down into steps of how someone can get control of their capacity to do this, where it's healthy and unhealthy, where hoarding is good, hoarding or collecting, and letting go is when the choice of which one is the right way to go. Developed a series of helpful questions that people can ask. A bunch of questions. How many questions were there? 12 different questions. Again, a well-worth essay to read. Thank you for that, and I commend you for that. And all these essays these new essays are posted every week at meaningfullife.com/mylife. If you also subscribe to our weekly newsletter, we send out and let you know when these new essays as they're posted. So, my friends, we come to the conclusion of episode 189, special Rosh Chodesh Kislev episode. Good Yontif, everyone. May we continue to appreciate and the zchus of the shlichus we were given, and the Rosh Chodesh Kislev, the key day that taught us that we can get through any challenge, and come out even stronger. And maybe be zeichet to finally have the end of the story, which is the coming of the Mashiach, Geula Amitis v'Hashlema, in this month of Geula, Chodesh Geula, the month when we have the Yom Geula of the Mitler Rebbe, Yud Kislev, and we have as well the Yud Tes Kislev. Tes Kislev is the birthday yahrzeit of the Mitler Rebbe, and the other way around, and of course then we go into Chanukah, which teaches us how we bring from darkness into light. Everyone have a very Geuladik week, and a good Chodesh, a blessed Chodesh, every Sunday 8 to 9 p.m. This has been My Life Chassidus Applied, episode 189. Thank you and be blessed.